Bengali Academia for Social Empowerment, popularly known by its initial base in an developmental initiative by the section of youth academics who joined hands with the professionals of various fields and welfare administrators with a pledge to bring a positive change in lives of marginalized sections of our population, especially the Muslims. It was incorporated into a trust towards the flagrant of 2018. Base followed a too prolonged approach. In one hand, study and research to identify the very obstacle which are preventing them to exploit available opportunities conducive for their progress, and on the other, creating aspiration within them for their own progress, equip them through proper training to complete and successfully exploit opportunities, motivating for hard work and instilling a sense of confidence within them. The member of BEDS worked hard under the unfavorable and inconvenient situation to implement their programs. They made it possible to conduct programs on research methodology and carry on coaching sessions to equip aspiring students to sit for the entrance exams like NET, SET, etc. BASE has developed training manuals for career counseling, which become very useful to conduct career counseling program. It has also conducted numerous lectures and seminars on various aspects of marginalized communities. With this, I request Hashan Davak, who is an EC member of BASE, to continue further. Over to you, Hassan.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tanya Parvin. So today, Tanya has already said about a very brief about the base and its journey and its function and its work. So this is the lecture series, is also part of this broader aspect, broader work of base. It actually generates intellectual capacity. So today we have a lecture on the queer resistance and sexual orientation in comic. Now, I would like to just start with the theory, the queer theory, which critically examine the way power works to institutionalize and legitimate the certain forms and expression of sexuality and gender while stigmatizing others. Queer theory problematizes and challenges rigid identity categories, norms of and sexuality and gender, and the oppression and violence that such hegemonic norms justify. Often considered the deconstruction of LGBT studies, the queer theories destabilizes sexual and gender identities, allowing and encouraging multiple unfettered interpretation of cultural phenomena. It predicts that all sexual behavior and gender expression, all concept linking such to prescribe associated identity and their categorization into normal or deviant sexuality or gender are constructed socially modes of social meanings. Now today we have the queer resistance, and Foucault already said where there is power, there is resistance. And it is also stated that where there is a resistance and there is power. So today in these lectures that we got a very efficient, very scholar's personality, that Miss Anuradha Dosad. So I would like to introduce our today's speaker. So Anuradha Dosad currently is a research scholar at Adamas University in English, Department of English. So beside that, she is an assistant teacher in English in high school, Jagriti Hindi Vidya Mandir. She has a double master in English and education, respectively. She has completed postgraduate diploma in English language teaching, post from NSOU. She has published a couple of chapters in books and has participated in several seminars and conferences both in India and abroad, including University of Pennsylvania. She is researching on comic books and which have the queer thing in them. Now today we got the Anuradha Dosad, and I hope that that this session will be very engaging session, and we'll see that how the power works, how the hierarchy, the gender and sexuality in the comics books actually works, and it is represented. We'll eagerly waiting to listen from Anuradha. So Anuradha, welcome, and the
Thank
stage
you.
is all yours.
Thank you so much, Hassan, for the brief introduction. A very good evening to all of you. So, my name is Anuradha Dosad, and I'm a research scholar of Adamas University. And as Hassan said, engaged in schooling also because I'm an assistant teacher in English at Jagriti Hindi Vidya Mandir High School. So, I'm going to present a lecture on queer resistance and sexual orientation in comics. And I personally believe that I love comics and I love queer as well. So I believe in my presentation, I blend blend the two words queer and comics, and I name them quimics. So I'm going to present my paper, and during my lecture, I request you all, like, I may have the permission that I'm going to switch off my video because it may create network issues, network glitches. So shall I start?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, Make it the full screen. Next slide. Next slide is not visible. Like, yes. Topics to be discussed. Okay, I can hear my voice and it is very disturbing. Okay. So topics to be discussed. What is queer? What is queer theory? What is gay? Who is gay actually? And who is lesbian? And the relationship between comics and queer, and evaluation of gay theory, and at last the Butch Femme theory. So the next slide, please. So first of all, the word queer, as Hassan already told, has already given the definition of queer. The word queer has had many different meanings in different times and places. It originally referred to strangeness or difference and become a term of abuse. It has since been reclaimed as a affirmative, or you can say the positive word. It can operate as an umbrella term for people outside of the heterosexual norm, or for people who challenge the LGBTQA. Like LGBT stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, transsexual, and so on and so forth, mainstream. And it can also be a way of challenging norms around gender and sexuality through different ways of thinking or acting. Next slide. Queer theory. So I have already mentioned that according to Marcus Tell, queer theories' origin are in LGBT studies which focus on sexuality and gender, and its so on distance itself from those approaches due to disagreements with the stable identities that LGBT studies suggest. Queer theory emphasizes the fluid and humanly performed nature of sexuality or better sexualities. It questions socially established norm and dualistic categories with a special focus on challenging sexual, that is binaries, that is heterosexual and homosexual, gender, that is male, female, class, rich people, rich or poor, racial, white and non-white classification. It goes beyond these so-called binaries to contest general political, that is public private, as well as international binary orders, democratic and authoritarian. Queer is an umbrella term for all genders, minorities who do not fall under the category of heteronormative. So the word heteronormative was popularized by Michelle Warner, which refers to set of cultural presumptions that the normal or natural form of attraction and relationships is one man and one woman who normally or naturally embody conventional gender roles and norms and have sex whereby men's penis penetrates the women's vagina, which is called PIV sex, and the other forms of sexuality and gender are less normal or natural than this. Queer theory in Laurentiis, Teresa de Laurentiis, 1991, advocates that one should move away from the usual and move towards homosexuality and give homosexual their share of respect. According to queer theory, there should be no normal, only challenging norms that a person may or may not fit into. It's a deconstructionist approach that disrupts the binary oppositions because these binaries are disrupted by then the inequalities will be eradicated. Queer theory is the lens which explores the categorization of gender. It challenges the conventional assumption about gender and sexuality and fight against inequalities. In the book, The History of Sexuality by Foucault, said over past many years that human are in the repression of desire and sex was considered as the only means of reproduction and not desire of a person. Foucault argued that the various discourses encourage us to produce knowledge about sexuality. According to him, discourses are sets of ideas about something like sexuality that are present in religions, medicine, law, science, therapy, or popular media. For example, Foucault saw a key role for the process of confession in this. These discourses have encouraged us to tell our sexual stories to an authority figure. These narratives come to feel like the truth of our sexuality. Actually, they are the means of internalizing social norm. Foucault called this internalization an attempt to portray a normal fixed identity, technologies of the self, and he was interested in exploring alternative technologies of the self, which were not prescribed by the universal norms. So they are the precursors of queer theory. We have Simone de Beauvoir, Michel Foucault, Judith Butler, and many more. The next slide, please. So before starting who is gay, I would like to put some arguments about Butler. So Butler argued rather than categorizing a person in their binary oppositions, one should understand that the gender is an attribute. That shift, I repeat, that gender is an attribute that shifts and changes according to time, and it never remains fixed. According to her, this changing attribute is called gender performativity. She argued that the gender is a kind of improvised performance. Gender is a kind of improvised performance, and she compared gender to an artist. She said our behavior is not an expression of an innate gender, but performance, which create gender. To give an instance, a woman can play male role in theaters or vice versa. Her idea of gender is considered as the beginning of queer theory. During the late 20th century, she pointed out that there should be no connection between gender and sex. Sex refers to whether a person is biologically male or female, where gender is social construction. It is seen whether they identify socially as a man or woman. They are independent in nature. For example, when a person is born, she or he is either male or female. But as he grows up, that the person placed in a certain gender role interpellation. And now this interpellation is a term which coined by Louis Althusser in one of his essay, which ideology and ideological state apparatus. Hopefully you have already read this essay as a notes toward an investigation in the book named Lenin and Philosophy and Other Essays 1970 is a process which makes us understand how these cultural beliefs and ideological values are internalized in our memory unconsciously, such as the color blue has been traditionally associated with the male gender and the pink with the female gender. Now, Butler argued that's how sex and gender associated with societal ideologies. And who is gay? Like, gay literature is a collective term used for LGBTQ and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, queer community, which involves the instability of the categorization and also describe people attracted to same sex, especially to men. The word gay comes from the old French in 12th century gay, which means full of joy or mirth. It may also relate to the High German Gahi, meaning impulsive. According to Oxford English Dictionary, the word is used as an adjective. As a noun, usually refers to homosexual community. Next slide. Many ancient mythologies like Greco-Roman include romantic and erotic stories of homosexuals as well. Greek myths often featured homosexuality. For instance, Zephyrus, Greek god of wisdom, and Hyacinthus are considered as gay lovers. Myths often include being gay, bisexual, or transgender as symbols for sacred or mythical experiences. According to Devdutt Patnaik, myths, legends, and lore capture the collective unconsciousness of the people, which reflects their profound beliefs about variant sexualities that may be odds with repressive social norms. The Hindu deity is Shiva, is sometimes worshipped as multi-gendered figure composed of Shiva and Parvati as his Ardhanarishwar form. Next slide, please. Now, who is lesbian? So, lesbian is a homosexual woman. The word is also used for women in relation to their sexual identity or sexual behavior, regardless of sexual orientation, with female homosexuality or same-sex attraction. Next slide. So this is this is Sappho and Arena in a garden at Italy. It's painted by Simon Solomon in 1864. The word lesbian is a demonym. Demonym means the people of Greek island of Lesbos, as a Greek city or island, is home to the 6th century BC poet Sappho. Sappho's poetry survives, but her remaining poetry reflects the topics she wrote about women's daily lives, their relationship and rituals. She focused on the beauty of women and proclaimed her love for girls. Before the mid-19th century, the word lesbian referred to any derivative or aspect of Lesbos, including a type of wine. Next slide. So, queer as homophobic abuse. So, the Burglary Act 1533 was an act of British Parliament in the reign of Henry VIII. The act stated burglary or sodomy was unnatural to God and man. It was the country's first anal sex law where anal penetration was a crime. Same-sex love in India, 2001 by Ruth Vinita and Salim Kidwai, is the first book to demonstrate same-sex sexuality has been practiced and discussed and depicted in until the British criminalized sodomy for the first time through the section 377. the IPC in 1861. Earlier, queer is considered as a form of homophobic use, and an 1894 letter by John Sholto Douglas, the Marquis of Queensberry, accused Oscar Wilde of having an affair with his son named Alfred Douglas. So sometimes queer was also used as more general insult to make things questionable by associating them with the same-sex attraction. In much the same way, the phrase "that's so gay" has more recently been used to imply that something is rubbish. So next slide. Make it full screen. It's a gay right movements, yes. During 1960s onward, LGBT community came forward to fight against and eliminate sodomy laws. This movement focused on decriminalization homosexuality to educate people about it. They fight for equal rights of homosexuals, and heterosexuals are no different. The Stonewall riots happened from June 28 to July 3, 1969, leading to a set of demonstrations where activists fought for spaces where people called to be open about their sexuality without fear of being arrested. Next slide. 1916 gay pulp fiction. So pulp derives from the cheap wood pulp on which magazines were printed. Pulp fiction is a cheap source of entertainment in the form of novel, usually in the genre of science fiction or detective stories. Gay pulp is a printed book that contains stories of homosexuality, especially male gay sex. As a result of 1960s homophilia movement in the United States, gay critics like Dreve Wing, Gunn, and James Harker took advantage of this freedom and started writing pulp fictions, which covered the extensive range of genres such as detective fictions, gothic novels, stories contains LGBTQ. Uh, the next slide. Okay. After getting inspired to curate a show of LGBT comics in the Cartoon Art Museum for San Francisco prior in 2006, Justin Law, in his work No Straight Lines, 4 Decades of Queer Comics, put an anthology together in order to increase the order of importance of LGBT community. After Stonewall riots in 1969 in New York, also known as gay rights movements, that transition occurred in the medium of comics, and LGBT literary comics became one of the subgenre. Uh, a straight line usually is a concept. It is an artifact of human mind. There are there could be, according to me, there could be no straight lines, but the approximation of straight lines, but perfectly straight line does not exist. Just like gender, which is a fluid form, and the approximations are considered as male or female. We are the approximations of gender rather than we are like male or female. So we are the approximations of gender, as I already mentioned. So next slide, please. Okay. So I have already mentioned that Bursary Act 1553 was an act, Parliament of England in the reign of Henry VIII. It was a country first civil sodomy, anal sex, and anal penetration is a crime according to the law. It is named after or given the reference of Bible. Sodom is a sinful city in the biblical book of Genesis, destroyed by sulfur and fire because of wickedness. So on 6 September 2018, Supreme Court of India marks Section 377 is unconstitutional, and that it remain in the force relating to sex with minors and non-consent sexual acts. Next slide. Judith Butler's heterosexual matrix. In Gender Trouble 1990, Butler defines the heterosexual matrix as that grid of cultural intangibility through which bodies, genders, and desires are naturalized, premised upon a stable sex expressed through stable gender. Female has sexual desire for men, that is heterosexual femininity, and men has sexual desire for women, that is heterosexual masculinity. Judith Butler's heterosexual matrix accounts for how we make assumptions based on what we see. Her theory explores that experience of most of the people, where sex and gender are known categories, so the viewers then assumes a particular sexuality. So, heterosexual matrix described as invisible norm, a norm which is invisible, okay, which does not appear to be constructed, but comes through as natural. Because I'm a girl and I have to sexual desire, and I should have the sexual, or I should have the sexual desire with men only. So a norm that defines everyone and everything as heterosexual until proved differently. So may I have the next slide? Yeah, Kinsey scale. Just a minute. So it's a Kinsey scale test about exclusive homosexuals, or exclusive hetero to exclusive homosexuals, from a very different starting point of the existentialist. In the mid-century, US biologist Alfred Kinsey was another important precursor to queer theory. Kinsey was an early example of a sex-positive researcher. His scientific research studies about sexual behavior were a response to the sex-negative culture of the time, which had kept him and his student in ignorance about sex. Due to all the taboos surrounding it, he saw sex as benign and something people should be open about. In addition to revealing the masturbation, sex outside marriage and diverse sexual practices were far more common than were previously assumed. Kinsey also found that 37% of men and 13% of women had at least some overt same-sex experience to orgasm, and many more experienced some degree of same gender attraction. The famous Kinsey scale used in these studies opened up in a new way of thinking about sexuality. The spectrum between heterosexuality and homosexuality rather than a binary, sounding rather queer. Kinsey concluded that the living world is a continuum in each and every one of its aspects. The sooner we learn this concerning human sexual behavior, the sooner we shall reach a sound of understanding of the realities of sex. Also, there is queer resonance in Kinsey focus on what people did, behavior, their experience, their attraction, rather than trying to classify them as certain types or fixed identities. He was not talking about any fixed identities, as the early sexologists had done. Kinsey research failed to question another binary, that of gender, and he produced volumes on the human and male, human male or female, and sexuality is defined in terms of gender of attraction, same or opposite. Kinsey time, scientific studies of sexuality have turned away from sexuality diversity, generally concentrating on categories of sexual identity, often assuming this to be binary, taking as essentialist view. Queer theory has remained distant from the research, ignoring and critiquing it, but perhaps Kinsey studies help us to imagine an alternative science of sexuality that could have alongside queer theory. The next slide. Can I read this? Like, it's a statement. Okay, it's a statement of Adrian Rich. Even before I wholly knew I was a lesbian, it was the lesbian in me who pursued that elusive configuration. And I believe it is the lesbian in every woman who's compelled by female energy, who gravitates towards strong women, who seeks literature that will express that energy and strength. It is a lesbian in us. It is a lesbian in us who drives us to feel imaginatively, render in language, grasps the full connection between women and women. The quote by Adrienne Rich in Compulsory Heterosexuality, and her essay Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence 1980. She is famously known normal that according to her that all sex advertisements prefer sexuality. This is talking about men and women. And she argues lesbianism is important to be noticed from the lesbian feminist perspectives. Heterosexuality is not innate in human beings. Heterosexuality is normal as homosexuality. According to her, a woman gets more benefited if she starts living with another woman, not a man. And she argues that all patriarchal men dominated society instead of compulsory heterosexuality because this is the only way of producing offsprings. That is, I have already mentioned by Judith Butler's heterosexual matrix, that is the invisible norms, which is responsible for way of producing offsprings. She's giving example by saying that a baby has firstborn with mother and connection with the woman, not with the man. She argues that it was necessary to be vocal about lesbianism and to break the taboo, reject the compulsory heterosexuality the society has imposed upon women. So, next slide, please. So, Hilarious Root, why comics? So, as I already said, I blend these two words, square and comics, and then make it quimics. So, I personally believe that comics define categorization. Comics is neither image nor tied toward either the both. Just like the queer. Queer is neither male nor female, either the both. So I believe comic books can tell the queer stories very conveniently. So Hilary Shute once said, if comic is about mapping, it's also about bodies, about locating them in space and time. Comic scholar Hilary Shute reveals the history of comics, underground comics, and graphic novel through deep thematic analysis and fascinating portraits of fearless men and women behind them. So, according to Scott McCloud, revealed that the methods behind comics and the way they worked in his classic understandings, comics will reveal the themes that comics handle the best and how the form is uniquely equipped to explore them. So I just want to mention one thing as well. Just so according to Scott McCloud, comics is a pictorial narrative presented in a sequence of words and pictures. And one of the reasons why comics are attractive because they contain colorful images. It is a medium which used to express ideas with a combination of words and images. And if you have read, there is something like queer about comics. Ramsey Fawaz and Derek Scott already mentioned there is something queer about comics. According to Ramsey Fawaz and Derek Scott in their work Introduction Queer About Comics, which gives the comics vent to the repressed desire of the people, reading them in a subtle way which meets the obvious radars of parental control. Comics is neither regarded as traditional literature since it contains pictures, nor it has been a place with paintings it contains written or typed word. This flexibility parallels the undetermined status of queer as well. We have the next slide. So I'm going to tracing the significance of the queer in the comics of Batman and Batwoman. Next slide. So this is a Batman and Robin, Dick Grayson, and I have already said that there should be no straight lines, and the straight line is a concept which is an artifact of the human mind. And you can see that Batman and Robin are sharing a same bed. They were talking about the sexual activities, and here we find them in queer location, and it is one of the panel of Dr. Watham deemed psychologically homosexual from the Golden Age, where did Frederick Watham in his book Seduction of the Innocent mentioned that Batman's stories are psychologically homosexuals. In the book The Secret Lives of Heroes by Gilman, which subverts the norms and orders of the societal construction and talks about the popular culture characters in their fictional, mundane everyday. And please, next slide. Now, the next slide. You can see the Robin and the Batman kissing each other. This is talking about Batman and Robin should get married. The Gilman is talking about that they should marry the Robin and Batman and should subvert the orders of the construction's norm. The next slide. Then this slide, you can see, the next one, the Joker one. Okay. The Joker is pinching Batman, hurting each other in order to testify to their mutually sadomasochist tendency. So sadomasochism is a psychological tendency or sexual practice to get sexual arousal by hurting each other. The picture is taken from Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison. So here Joker has been repeatedly called Batman, sweetheart, honey, dear, wife. And he's saying, have I touched your nerve? In reply, Batman is saying, take your filthy hands off. They show how heterosexual response of Batman to Joker. The queer Batman, the first slide, the previous one. No, the previous one. So I mentioned that is 1960 Batman, and now the 2020 Batman is a queer Batman. You can see the color. So Andy Madhurst wrote in his essay 1991, Batman Deviance and Camp, in the anthology In the Many Lives of the Batman is interesting to queer audience, where he was one of the first fictional characters to be attacked on the grounds of presumed homosexualities. Okay, the next slide. Batwoman. So I am researching on Batman and Batwoman, so I have bounded my area I have caged myself in Batman and Batwoman. So it's about Kate Kane, it's about Batwoman. So it is a Kate Kane. Actually, I have taken Batwoman from the Greg Rook and J.H. Williams. In the aftermath of Batman's disappearance, Kate Kane must overcome her demons to protect Gotham City by donning the avatar of Batwoman. Kate Kane is a daughter of Colonel Jacob Kane and Captain Cabby Kane. So the next one, Kate tried to please her father by entering the US Military Academy. As a cadet, she excelled in all areas, eventually earning the rank of Brigade Executive Officer. The next slide. See, she is also roomed with Captain Sophie Moore, with whom she entered a lesbian relationship. Next slide. Eventually, an anonymous accusation of homosexual conduct was brought against about it. Lily, please come next slide. Next slide, please. Her, don't ask, don't tell policy. She was discharged, and her father forgave her and realized that she did not lie to save herself. Next one. So explain that is yes the next one. Butch Femme. So this is the book. Just like I have already mentioned, that is a Butch culture to define the identities of the females who have constructed masculine traits called Butch. Some of them having constructed feminine traits, which is Femme. It is found by lesbian communities in the 20th century, and it is against binary opposition. High Femme, the first spectrum is High Femme, is an uber feminine lesbian who leads to pamper themselves. They love makeup and have skincare routine. It is sometimes also called lipstick lesbian. Lipstick lesbian. The next one is Femme. Femme is a lesbian whose appearance and behavior is seen as traditionally feminine. Range 2 to 4 seems to be the highest in number. Next is Butch Femme. It's a lesbian whose appearance is seen as the amalgamation of feminine and masculine traits, having the both, Butch and the Femme. Now, this is a common, the queer form is a combination of Butch and Femme. Its mention is Futch. Futch is a queer woman or non-binary person who is both Femme and Butch. Some are Butches or studs and some are Femmes. Next is Soft Butch. It is one of the spectrum of the Butch, and they have gender identities of women but primarily display masculine characteristics. Butch. Traditionally, in lesbian culture, the word butch refers to a woman whose gender expression and traits present as typically masculine. Stone butch, which is an example, an epitome of the butch identity, a lesbian who did not let her partner touch her sexually. So, I draw a parallel connection between this butch femme spectrum to the character called Batwoman. The Kate Kane and her alter ego is Batwoman. Kate Kane is physically appearance. The next slide, I just want to show. Yes. Kate Kane is physical appearance. Here can be termed as soft butch, a woman who emulates certain masculine cues. Short hair, male cut clothing, more boyish vibe in flirting, with a softer feminine edge, a bit of makeup, a lack of rigidity around gender activities. On the other hand, Batwoman, who dresses up like High Femme. She has red hair, uh, like it's the opposite. Like she has very red hair and she puts lipstick in order to deceive her enemies. She dresses up like this in order to disguise her identity. But actually, she is Stone Butch, which is more vigilante in nature. Moreover, that she dresses up like High Femme, but she's actually a vigilante. Who is more vigilante in nature? She takes the role of vigilante in order to heal the society. So basically, in conclusion, I want to say, next slide. The comics can be assumed. It can be assumed that the comic books do not always stereotype character, but within this stereotypical representation, there could be subversive ideas. A conducive, and thus a comics a conducive medium for the representation of queer issues. So thank you so much for this patience, and you can put your questions or suggestion in my mail ID that I have given, zanumit@gmail.com, if you have any questions or suggestions. So thank you so much for patiently listening to me.
So, ma'am, so we take a couple of questions.
Yeah, why not? If I'm able
Okay.
to, like, okay, thank you
Yes.
so much for the questions.
So,
Yeah.
so if you have any question, please ask. Please unmute yourself and you can ask.
How do you describe, some Shubhadeep Jana has question, like, how do you describe the color? Like, what was the question?
Yes, the question is how do you describe the color code of the queer in comics? So, Subhadeep, madam has
Uh,
already described. So,
yeah, I
yes,
have
ma'am.
already. Yeah, I have already described about blue and pink color that I have already described in Butch Femme spectrum. That blue is something which is something traditionally associated with like male, and the pink is something traditionally associated with the female. And I have already make a difference between Butch Femme spectrum. The color of blue and pink, if we can combine, it makes a color purple or violet, which is the color of queer, which is named after. If you consider Butch Femme spectrum, you can say this Butch and Femme, Fuch, is the queer woman, and this purple, this violet color, you can say the color of queer. So it's a very interesting, like sometimes I have been asked by one of my professors in my PhD registration, that how do you define black as a color of queer? It's a very interesting question. I have like faced. Uh, I have mentioned about Batman. So Batman is a nocturnal, Ratri Vala Bere, and this is something very nocturnal. And Batman is actual. Uh, you can say the alter ego is Bruce Wayne, and the real identity is Batman. Batman is is usually what you say to to hit the criminals during night, during the dark, which is the significance of the color black, and which is also the significance of the queer, because the he dresses up like Batman, and he donned the avatar of Batman, and he actually Batman, and he takes the role of vigilante in order to heal the society, to beat up the criminals in order to heal the society, which is also the significance, the black significance, the color of the black color is also the significance of queer. Sometimes I have this is the most important question, like I have been asked by one of my professors in my PhD registration. So I hope I was able to make that
Okay.
clear, Shubhadeep.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So, uh, another question. So, yes, Subhadeep says, yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shubhadeep.
so if you have any question,
So if you people have any personal suggestions, please put your suggestion, put your observation. I don't require much question, but please, yeah, thank you so much, Arundhati. Please put suggestion, Arundhati. I want suggestion from you people as well, because I'm working on it. It's my passion actually. আমার supervisor আমাকে বলেছিল do not say the word passion, because but I said that this is my passion. Queer and comics is my passion, actually is my passion. So kindly put your observation in my mail, or you can give me suggestions too.
so I hope there is no other question. So, this is the final part of the lecture. So, thank you, very much, Mr. Anuradha Dosad. And you are my friend. I am doing some kind of
And
mistake.
you are
Okay.
forgetting my
And
name. This is very
Arun,
bad.
no, no, no. Arundhati is here also. Arundhati also my friend. So
And that is
it's kind
fine.
of,
You are getting confused between Anuradha and Anundhati.
yes,
Oh, no
yes.
problem.
So
Not an
yes,
issue.
yes. So yes. So this is today is very engaging session, and again I am asking the students who are very interested in doing research in gender studies and queer studies and even feminism or masculinity studies. You can ask question in general. This is very informal space. You can ask question, no problem. So we had a research course session. So in this
Thank you so
session,
much,
you can
Aditi.
also that ask question.
And you put your suggestion, put your observation. I want many observation. Please, please put your suggestions. I think Ram is here.
And I have a question that I was thinking that that pink color basically associated with the feminine quality, and of course that you have discussed that associated with that. Could you see the journey of that color? Has ever that color was associated with masculinity or with the male, that pink
Why
color?
not? Like my question, why we traditionally associate the color, symbol of color, right? ছেলেটা একটা pink পছন্দ করতে পারে না. Like
No, this
my
is
husband, yeah, my husband wears a helmet which is pink in color. And often I question about many, ছেলে হয় pink color পরছো না. I deliberately say my husband, no, please use pink color. Because no, this is not color bias. This is not gender
no, no,
bias.
no,
Color
no,
is
no, not. My question was not that. The question was that যে কখনো কি এটা অ্যাসোসিয়েটেড ছিল ম্যাসকুলিনিটির সাথে? মানে I have noticed it.
Pritesh is saying the scooter is pink too. uh,
Yes.
I don't know, Hassan. You can, if you ask me, masculinity সাথে কখন যুক্ত ছিল?
Okay, so this is very yes, we'll discuss it later. So we
Yeah,
can
of
expect a
course.
question from students, another listener. So Anuradha, so could you explain something about the queer comics in context of India? So what I have observed it basically from the Western perspective, background and the
ইন্ডিয়ার
perspective.
জন্য, yeah, if you ask me, like রাজ কমিক্সে আছে কিছু আমি পড়েছিলাম, like not like very frequent. I did have like Amanush, yeah, Pritesh doing Amanush, yeah, Amanush আছে. So some interesting queer, and Nagraj also, Nagraj comics. It has something queer comics. Yeah. Sushmita Pandey, Kari, the graphic novel, yeah, Kari is also there. Sushmita Pandey has something, some questions. Like, what was the question? I miss out. Hassan sir,
Yes.
Sushmita.
So Susmita, you can ask. Oh, she has written it.
She has written.
Yes. So, ma'am, can we say that transgender community as what is the pronunciation of it? Futch.
Fudge.
Fudge.
Yeah,
Okay.
why not? Transgender community, even we all like queer. If you say like it's at queer women, so why not? And fudge is something which is about a queer woman, a non-binary person who has a quality of both femme and budge. Now, why not? This is a very good question. Thank you, Shushmita, for the question. Yeah, of course, we can say. According to me, yes, for me, we can. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shushmita, for the question.
So this is I would like to thank Anuradha Dosad for this engaging and this is wonderful lecture, and of course I would like to thank Base and its organizer and all the EC member and the team who is working behind the lecture series. And last but not the least, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to all the participants, all the audience. So with this, I would like to conclude the session here. So thank you all. Good night.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hassan. Thank you all.